All right, welcome back to another episode of the 1.2 podcast. Good morning, Jack. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing well. You can, if you're watching this from home and not just listening, or maybe you can hear it. I'm a little congested up top, and it's not because I'm sick. It's because I just got done yesterday baling hay.
Ah, baling hay. You sound like a
Baling.
West Virginian.
Well, it's maybe I don't know. Is that what West Virginians do?
No, we bale hay. We bale hay. I
You
guess in
can
the
grow hay in
Westerners,
West Virginia.
you can't. That's one of the few things that you can grow.
Hmm.
Other than coal mines and chemical plants. But
Well, my question for you, as I was baling hay, because I'm from basically a city in West Bend, Wisconsin. Didn't grow up on really a farm,
sure.
but my dad did. And we talk about last week, talked a little bit about hard work and what's that mean, and those sorts of things. Is there something, and I'll ask you to pick one, but maybe that's too hard to pin down. But baling hay and having a little hobby farm, I don't think my dad could have taught us the value of hard work without that. That was our thing. Like if you learn
Right.
how to bale hay, and we're talking about, like, we call them the idiot blocks, little
Sure.
blocks. You're stacking. That's what I
Yep.
did all day yesterday, and we had about 275 bales.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
is there something that you learned, or that, as either from your parents or as a father, something you want to teach your kids? Something you couldn't teach them the value of hard work without fill in the blank.
Yeah. Well, my equivalent to baling hay growing up was processing firewood. Because if we didn't cut wood in the summer, we were going to be cold in the winter. So I grew up,
It
in a
sounds like a
house that
West Virginia thing.
we're going right down that road. Yeah, so our source of heat was a wood stove. We had a indoor wood stove as our central heat system in the living room of our main downstairs room, and then kind of filtered up and heated the upstairs as well. And so every summer we had to cut firewood. You know, in the hills of West Virginia, it's not as simple as just cutting down a tree and pulling it over to the house. I mean, we had this fire access road that wound up and around our property, and so we had to find the dead trees that had fallen, try to figure out how to get to them because they were probably down over the hill or in the hollow or in the little valley there. Try to drag up either chunk by chunk or see if it was a better idea to pull it down through the ravine down to the road to the lower field. How are you going to get to it? Processing it, so either cutting down a dead tree or cutting up one that had already fallen, and then splitting it mostly by hand.
Okay,
And
that was going to be my question. Are we
yeah, oh,
talking
oh yeah,
like
oh
fancy wood splitter,
yeah,
or we,
no,
we got
no, no,
okay,
no, no. Yeah, once I went to college, then my dad got the nice wood splitter.
of course.
But growing up from as young as I can remember, probably 6, 7, 8 years old, my dad had a little I think it was a 4 or 6 pound maul, splitting maul. It's not a shopping mall. Mall is
Mhm.
MAUL, not MALL. So a little splitting maul, and my brother and we'd be splitting wood, or if you couldn't swing the maul, then you're dragging logs over to the truck, throw it in the truck. Then from there, we had to take it, load by load, and put it up on our porch because we didn't want to be trekking out in the snow in the middle of the winter to to grab the firewood, and that had to last all winter. So
So where my question follow up question with that is, I mean, was your dad was stacking that pile? Was that like a meticulous puzzle that had to be perfect?
I don't know if my dad wanted to be the one to stack it because he was so particular about it, or if it was the easiest job and he wanted to do it.
Mm.
Um, he was clever that way. No, there was, and it wasn't. There was a reason for it, right? When you're stacking firewood, if you don't get the ends right,
Mm-hmm.
particularly, um, it'll start to tilt one way or another. And we did have some supports on the deck, some kind of framing, in for the logs in the middle. But if you don't get the right pieces in the right spots, the pile will start to lean forward or backwards. So
Mm-hmm.
there is an
And
art
doesn't
to it.
that help with the way it dries out too? If it's not like you got to keep it.
We weren't so concerned about that because we only generally stacked dry wood.
Sure.
Um, I know in baling, it's got to be dry when you pick it up because when you stack it tight.
Yeah.
But yeah, with firewood, it wasn't so much about that, but we had to maximize the space we had. And if you're just tossing them on, it's gonna be, there's gonna be a lot of gaps in between, um, and it's gonna be really unstable. It's actually, I mean, it's a safety concern, especially with little
Mm-hmm.
kids running around on the porch and things like that. So we were, yeah, my dad, I'd say, was pretty meticulous in how he wanted it stacked. I remember, the days that when it finally transitioned and I got to stack. It's funny, the way we had to load the wood onto the deck was we had to back the pickup truck with the wood in the back, next to the porch, but it was still, we had to throw it up onto the porch. So we had a little chain of people. One guy's in the truck throwing the logs up or handing them up to the porch, and the person on the porch handing it to the person who's stacking, and this person stacking is, placing them in the right spots. So yeah, it was a process. It was a process.
Do you call it out there making wood? Got to go make wood.
I no,
Okay.
I've never heard that phrase before in my life.
Really? Not even when you've been here? I feel like
No,
that's what we say in the Midwest. Is, I'm gonna go make wood.
yeah, go make some wood for the
Mm-hmm.
fire. Hmm.
Right.
Hmm. Interesting.
I mean, in a
No,
sense, you
no.
are making it. You're making something
Well,
out of something else.
the way I see it, God made the wood. We're just cutting it down and using it. So
I figured there would
it's
be a God problem for you with making, so you don't call it creating wood.
it's but I don't make a garden either. I mean, I
That's
plant a
I think
garden.
that's a Midwest thing. You
It
just
must be.
you
That's
make
that's a
wood. Go make wood. Let's.
yeah.
Can you come over and help me make wood?
No, no, no. It's a hey, we got to split some wood today, or if anything, the overall process would be processing the firewood, or storing the firewood. Yeah, never
So,
never heard that
no,
phrase.
nah, chalk another one up for the Midwest.
There we go.
So,
There we go.
is that something? I imagine it's a little bit different than us baling hay because our we didn't really make much money on it. We didn't need it for our livelihood. It was just here's how you learn how to do hard work. I imagine it's different when it's heating your home. But is it something that you enjoyed doing?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's nothing better, and I've baled hay too, and I would say same exact feeling. At the end of the day, you're looking at this completed, this
Mm-hmm.
stack of firewood, or this stack of hay that you've baled. The hay, once you get it in the barn, and you're looking at it there, it's piled up in the right spot. I mean, you look at this thing that you have accomplished. Usually, as a team, it's a group effort thing. There was no better feeling than when we got the final row of firewood, done, and we could relax. We could breathe easy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it all worked out because you're dependent on the weather, right? In baling hay, you got to get the weather right.
Oh,
So
it's a game. I mean,
you're
when
waiting
you
for this
cut it,
little
you
window,
gotta
right?
rake it up and then to
Yep.
get it baled, and it's almost
Right.
like pouring concrete in a sense with that, concrete fever.
Yep. Yep.
It's
When it's
got to
go
get done
time, it's go.
now.
That's
Yeah,
right. That's right. So I would liken it to the same feeling. Yeah. When you have that sense of accomplishment, it's a team building exercise, so to speak. And maybe we should start doing like corporate retreats for big companies where we have them bale hay.
yeah.
You know, that
The
would that.
problem is there's always a problem when you bale hay.
Oh, there. Oh,
Like
of course.
the baler's not working, or you shear a pin, something like that, and then you're sitting there for 4 hours trying to fix a piece of equipment that is too old, probably not even
Right.
worth fixing. But to your point about, like, I feel the same when I mean, stacking that wagon
Mm-hmm.
is a game. It's a puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
That's fun. And you see
Mm-hmm.
that finished product. And then in, you see, I think one of the prettiest sights, and it's maybe weird to say pretty, but a freshly baled field where the
Yep.
new hay is just starting to, I mean, it's basically like a freshly mowed lawn.
Right.
But it's just something about it, just the way it looks. You can almost see the accomplishment,
Yep. Yep.
and
There's
I think
a
it's cool.
smell to it. There's a smell,
Oh yeah.
of the hay. There's a smell to freshly split or sawed firewood. When you're working with nature like that, when you're processing, not making, when you're processing hay or firewood or something like that, there's it it all of your senses are involved in that,
Hmm.
right? In a way that many other things, and unlike a lot of work, where your senses are all involved, all of the senses, there's a pleasantness to it, even though it's hard, right? So you're doing hard work with your body, but you're also the smells are natural. They're fresh. There's a freshness to it. It's not like when you're doing drywall or something. Yeah, it's hard work, or whatever you're working in a factory or something. It's hard work, but the smell portion of it isn't great. Or if you're working indoors, and the visual portion isn't as,
Hmm.
I don't know, satisfying. There's something really about working in nature, that and working outside and working in those types of things, where all of it is a pleasant or rewarding experience. So your senses are all being filled with this just very satisfying feeling.
Yeah, and I think baling hay. Well, for me, it's so much different than what I do on a
Right. Sure.
ordinary day, which is why it's nice and refreshing sometimes.
Right. We
I
got
like,
all these farmers and people out there who are like, yeah, well, do it every day for a couple of
yeah,
years, and
exactly, exactly.
a bunch of
Yeah,
city slickers think they
yeah.
come out and do this
Right.
once
Oh,
a
it's
year.
beautiful. It's a beautiful, like,
But
but it's like I really enjoy doing it. The only thing I'm pretty sure I'm allergic to it, and so
it
that's
sounds
why I
like
just
it.
like blow up. And I hate being itchy, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
I joke about farmers saying, "Oh yeah, why don't you?" But farmers are some of the few people who I do know who really do look at their job as like a beautiful thing.
Hmm.
A lot of people, even in the trades, you go and you're building a house, you're like, yeah, it's framed in, okay, that's fine. But people who work outdoors, in farming, or there's something about them that they look at their work as something that is beautiful. Um, Maybe they don't say it in those words, and their sort of gruff mannerisms a lot of the time, but you can tell, if it's a dairy, the love for their animals, or the care
Hmm.
for the animals. If it's just crops, a cash crop or something like that, they still look at they look at the corn as it comes up, or they look at the fields, the wheat, the oats, whatever it is, the soy, and oh yeah, looks like it's coming up real good this year. There's a appreciation for the art that they are creating, in a sense, that I think they have, that a lot of people don't get that in their day to day jobs. So
Yeah,
even
I
though they're
think
not,
it does tie into the making part. Like
yeah,
more than anything else, you're more, I think, connected with your livelihood, your existence, your experience, and it's, I don't want to use too many puns, but it's a deeply rooted connection,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's cool to see, and I admire it. I could
yeah,
never do it.
right,
Uh,
right. I look at it. I compare a farmer, to an artist, in a sense, except that their canvas is the soil, right? And they are trying to pull something out of the soil, something that's workable, something that's usable, that's quality. So all the soil conditions, the weather conditions, the terrain, the nutrients, all these things. It's like a painter mixing paint on their I don't even know what that plate is that they have, that Bob Ross uses to mix the paint, with as he paints. But yeah, that's what farmers are doing every year, and then they're working the soil, they're cultivating it so that they can bring the best quality, product out of it.
so maybe to wrap up my idea today, going back to making wood, is that something that, yeah, your kids maybe probably they're probably getting to that point where they can help with that, maybe not on a large scale operation, but sounds like it was very important to you growing up. Is that something that you have to pass
Yeah,
along to them?
yeah. So obviously, so much of what you raise your kids doing is circumstantial. It's not like I live in the woods anymore. We don't process our own
Do
firewood.
live on a compound, but
It's getting there. It's getting there. Not quite compoundish yet, but I mean, it has the flavor of a compound. But I don't have my own forest to get my trees from. We are actually hoping to install a wood stove this fall. Try to heat our house, at least supplement the propane usage with some wood heat. Um, but the opportunity doesn't exist as much to process our own firewood. That being said, we are going to order some logs, I think, and cut them up and split them ourselves. And I am going to teach my kids to do that. Um, I suspect that it will not have the same uh, importance or impact on them as it did me, which is why it's important that we find other things, right? If
mm-hmm.
you live in town, if you live in the city or something like that, your kids aren't going to have the opportunity to do some of these things, and so it's important to find what are those things. What are those things that you can have your kids doing on a day to day basis, that teaches that sort of process. It's one thing to have them just put away the dishes, right? Um, it's another for them to actually work through a project from start to finish, that not just mentally, you know I don't want to say bores them, but it's not play, right? But something that challenges them mentally and physically in that sense. um, and I think that nature has a big part of that. I think you almost have to be outside to do that. So whether it's
you mean
processing.
you mean the process of finding the remote, picking it up, turning on the television, selecting the right app to watch one
Well,
of
and
the show.
and picking the show, right? I mean,
Right.
what show are
Filtering
you going to
through
watch?
Netflix.
There's so much out there, right?
Yeah.
How are you gonna choose? I mean, that's a lot for a kid to. Yeah, I don't think that you have to. You know, I don't think it has to be baling hay or chopping wood. I think there are other things available. Hiking is a big part, a way to do that. Um, Endurance bike riding, things that require steady discipline at what you're doing for an extended period of time. I think that's the key to this. Something that is forcing yourself to exert yourself in this prolonged period of time, and you can't just walk away, right? You're not going to be
Mm-hmm.
halfway through bailing and say, you know what, let's just call it quits for the day and go watch a show, right? When that tractor starts rolling, it's go time, right?
Right.
You're not going to get halfway through a log and say, you know what, I'll just leave them all here, and we'll come back out and finish splitting another time. Unless it's a weather related thing, you can't do that. I think hiking, is a big way of, a good way to do that. You're out there in the woods. If you don't hike back to the car, you're not getting home, right?
Right.
Um, Things like that, canoe trips. There's different ways that you can do it. Um, to an extent, even fishing, I think can teach kids that type of thing because you're out there for an extended period of time. You have a goal, and it's not always exciting. It's sort of the same thing over and over and over. Um, so I do think it's important for my kids to experience at least some of these things. Unfortunately, I don't think that they will have the same level of experience with at least splitting wood that I did. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll take
Maybe
a
with
hand.
making wood.
Maybe with making. No, my kids will never make wood. They weren't born here, so well, some of them were. And so maybe we'll do a pilgrimage out to West Virginia, to the house in West Virginia every year, and we'll just cut down trees, haul firewood, and just split it. And say, why are we splitting this? Well, because it's good for you. That's why.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we don't need it anymore, but maybe that's what we'll do.
There you go.
What
Well,
about you?
as far as am I going to teach them or be able to do
Yeah,
this? I mean,
yeah,
I have the same practical issue that you just identified with. I don't have a farm. I don't have a place to bale hay. If my dad's still baling, well, they can bale. Yeah, we'll do that. But I think that's the point of a lot of our conversations and what we're doing or trying to do just with this podcast, right? Is
yep,
talking about discipline and repeatable habits that
yep.
improve your life. And we've talked about several examples. You just put them out there. I think exercise is important, and that's
Mm-hmm.
that's what I use. Um, and so,
Yep.
yeah, getting them involved in that, and it just
You know
I'm
what?
a big habit guy. Getting in good
Yeah,
positive habits.
yeah. So that kind of reminds me of something I did with my kids maybe 2 or 3 months ago. They're 8 and 9 right now, so certainly capable of learning an instrument. And I said, okay, guys, every day for 15 minutes, you're going to play the ukulele. And the first day, it was one chord, which on a ukulele just involves one finger, one string, right? It's a very user friendly instrument in that regard. And I had them sit there and strum for 15 minutes, right? And they were pretty bored with it. But then the next day, I added a second chord and had them switch. By the end of the month, they were playing songs, right, on the ukulele. And they're so excited, so happy about it. And it had that sense of accomplishment. Hey, I did this thing over and over and over and over and over. And now I actually know these chords. I know how to play a song. And it got them really into it, got them into music. So I think music can be one of those things that
Mm-hmm.
repetition. There's a study that shows if you do something 100 hours a year, which I think is around 15 minutes a day, something like that, you will be better at that discipline than
Mm-hmm.
95% of people in the world, right? So if you just dedicate yourself and your kids, push it on them a little bit, right? And 15 minutes is not that long. I know kids get bored really quickly,
Right.
but you just stick with them. It's important for you to be present. You can't just say, "Hey, do this," and walk away. You do it alongside. My dad split wood alongside me. It's not like he sent me out with a maul and said, "Go split the wood." Um, he was out there swinging the axe or the maul right next to me. Right, it was a group thing. You
Right
know.
there making it with you.
You Midwesterners. Next, you're going to be talking about the bubbler again.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I think I'm self-deprecating enough.
Yeah, just were you making some water over at the bubbler,
Making water. Yep.
eh? Fair enough.
But I
Fair
agree.
enough.
The investment, to maybe put a bow on this, and I don't know if I could put a better bow than you did, but I mean, the investment in healthy and productive habits is a team effort. And we can't expect to just do it on our own, or we can't expect others to do it on their own. I think it's almost more important that we demonstrate and show, our kids, our friends, our family, what those good habits are before we can expect them to do it on their own.
That's a great point. I agree with you 100%. So encouraging, uh, you know, I'll say message, but encouraging topic. I think it's good. Get out there with your family, get out there with your kids, your friends. You know, establish that goal, work through it, accomplish it, then sit back and enjoy a glass of lemonade as the sun sets and look at that field, right? Or whatever the equivalent is.
I'll have my bourbon, but
Or mix the two, right?
there you go.
All right. Until next time.